Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome back to the webinar series on the occasion of PlayStreet's 10th year anniversary. As our regular attendees may know by now, this is our 6th webinar in the series. And those of us who are joining us for the first time today, please feel free to check out our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. My name is Pranjali, and I'm a special educator and psychologist at PlayStreet. As you all may know, PlayStreet is an organization that provides educational services to help the child with special needs become independent and live up to their full potential. We also offer parent empowerment programs, integrated schooling programs, and a variety of clinical services. This year marks the 10th running year of PlayStreet. So we decided to bring you a series of 10 webinars, which will talk about small things to do at home to see many big changes. Today's expert is Sarah Abraham, who will be shedding light on how communication is more than just speech and how we can support our children using different approaches and strategies. Sarah is a speech language pathologist who enjoys working with children. She strongly believes that every child is able and has a voice of their own and loves helping children brings out their voice to the world around them. I will now hand over to Sarah. If you have any questions, kindly use the chat box. We'll have a small Q&A at the end of the webinar so we can maintain the flow of the event. Sarah?
Thank you so much, Pranjali. Good morning, everybody. It's really nice to see all of you here for our 6th webinar. I will just share my screen and we can get right into the presentation. So I'm sure many of you that are joined here today do have children who have difficulties in terms of communications, or parents and professionals who are here. And today, the main goal of today's webinar, the topic that we've chosen, is to just highlight and tell the difference of why communication is so much more than just speech and how do we go about it. So before we begin, I'm just going to put out 3 words, and I just want to have a bit of feedback from the parents who are here. You can either type it out and tell us what do you think. So I'm going to give you words. There's 3. That's communication, speech, and language. Do you think all 3 of them are the same? If you think so, why? And if you think no, why not? If 1 or 2 parents could answer, it would be great. If I just want this to be an interactive session. So communication, speech, and language.
No, they are not the same.
Okay, they're not the same.
And
What
parents.
Okay,
Yeah.
so communication, speech is any sound that you make. Communication engages is engagement between, it's more of a cognitive activity. It's more of engagement between 2 people where there's a, give and take. There's an interaction, back and forth interaction. And then there's, there's a cognitive activity involved. Yeah, and language is one of the, it's bringing the 2 together, speech and communication together. Using a modem to bring the 2 together.
All right, definitely. Yes, absolutely. I think you've covered a lot of things that I wanted to speak about. So thank you so much, Charlotte, for that. Just going into this is the first thing that we would love, that as professionals, as speech therapists, that something that we would love all parents to understand is that communication is so much more than just speech. So I'm going to go and break this down into these 3 parts today, and we're going to be looking at how do we work with our children who have these difficulties. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, like Charlotte mentioned before, is what is speech. Okay, so when you're looking at speech, it's purely just the sounds that are produced with our mouth. It is with our mouth. It's just a motor activity that happens inside our mouth. We use different parts of our mouth. I don't know how many of you have been with us in our previous presentations, but we did speak about motor planning. If not, please go check back the previous webinars that we've been doing. We did speak about how much of motor movement is required in the mouth, how much of sensory movement. We've been talking so on and so forth for quite some time. So speech is purely something that is motor. So I've got my articulators, that is all of the parts in my mouth, moving in certain directions to produce certain sounds. So the voice comes in from my throat, from my vocal cords, the breath comes in and that comes out as my voice, and then my mouth moves in a particular manner to say the words. It does not have anything to do in terms of me thinking. thinking about what I want to say. Okay, it is purely how we say it. So you've got your articulation that happens, that is the mouth, the movements of every part of your mouth happening. How fluently we say it, that's your fluency. So how smooth of a flow, when I'm talking right now, it's smooth. So how smoothly can I talk? And also the voice that I carry. So this is what speech is, okay? So when all of you come in, or when we have so many individuals who come in saying that they have speech difficulties, this can be where you have a difficulty in terms of trying to say, or trying to move according to a specific sound. People have difficulties in that. So that is when, so that it's a completely it does interchangeably. A lot of times these terms are mixed around, and that's what we want to kind of clear it up today and say that this is a pure motor act. My child can be saying ball, 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 but if my child doesn't know that he can request for a ball, that doesn't make it communication. Okay, that becomes, it's just speech. It's just my child saying something with his mouth. So that is what we want you all to understand. So that's the first thing of what speech is. Going into what is language. Again, language is something, it's a system of conventional spoken, manual, or written symbols. Now, there is a symbol that has been structured. There is a structure that's been given well beforehand. So now, and that specific symbol has been placed. So every time you see something that's round, that's colorful, if I just, I describe and say, okay, an animal that has, that walks on 4 legs, has a tail, it barks. Immediately your mind will symbolize, and it will be dog. Right? With just me describing this, that's language. That is me understanding. It's a pure cognitive, like Charlotte mentioned before. It's a cognitive thing where my mind puts together, what are these symbols that we've placed. It's not, a dog was just not named a dog. Okay, it looks like a dog, that's why it's called a dog. There was a symbol that's set in place. So that's what, even if you look across languages, all of these languages have different terms and different, names that they use for different things. That's why it is a system that is set in place. There are symbols that are set in place. So you've got a meaning, so that every word has a meaning, every sound, how the sounds are put together. So when you look at language, there are multiple things that come in together. So you've got the meaning of the words, you've got how each sound comes together to create the word, you've got how in a sentence. So you will say this is a ball, the grammar of it. I don't say this is, I don't say this is an ball, or, we've got a lot of grammar structure that comes in. And how do I use this in terms of functionally, in terms of my pragmatics of using it in social situations? How do I bring all of this together? Again, there's 2 very, very important parts when we talk about languages. One is understanding it, and the second part is me being able to express it out. Now, expression can be in any form. It doesn't always have to be verbal. So when I'm talking about understanding, like using the example that I gave you all before, the moment I described a dog and gave you 2 sentences saying animal, 4-legged animal that barks, it already went into your mind and it's already registered. Okay, she's talking about a dog. That's the understanding that we have, or what we call as the receptive language. And you've got your expression, that's me saying. Also, if I ask you that question, you immediately will say, that's a dog. So that is the part when it comes to language. So speech is completely a motor movement of the mouth that happens. Language is you understanding and expressing it. Okay, and there is a system in place to use certain words, certain structures that come into place for us to use, for us to be able to do that. So that is what we say. So what happens with our children, what happens with them is they can have difficulties, according to their age, they can have difficulties in this, in terms of whether understanding it or expressing it. Okay, so we will be going into details of that also later on. So I spoke about speech, I've spoken about language. Okay, I'm going to go into the next thing, and that is communication. Now, when you're talking about communication, okay, like very, very important for you all to understand is that my child can have speech, my child can have language, but again, the process of being able to express that to another person or interact, exchanging information and idea, if that doesn't happen, that is not communication. Okay, communication is the active process of exchanging information. Okay, so if you're looking at it, it is an umbrella of all of this. You need your language, you need your speech, but it's a broad category. It is so much more than just words. It's more than just saying. So that's what I gave the first example of saying that my child can say chalky, 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 and keep walking around the house saying that. But if my child cannot come to me and tell me, Mama, I want to eat a chocolate, or, I want to do this, or I want to do that, we really don't understand. Or does the child, take us and point and say, this is what I want to do? That is what is communication. Okay. So speech is different, language is different, and communication is three different entities, but they come together. That is very, very important for us to understand. In communication, the first thing that I want you all to always remember, if there's something, is this is not limited to speech. Okay, this is not limited to speech. When we're talking about it, communication happens more than words. Now, if you take any, I'll start with right at the basics. None of our babies who are born cry and tell, like they tell us, I want milk, I'm hungry, I'm in pain. They don't do that. What they're doing is they communicate. How do parents, or how do we understand that our child wants something as an infant? It's just by them crying. We understand, we hear them crying differently. We hear them crying different for when they're hungry. We hear them crying different for when they, want food, when they are in pain. So we understand that is communication. There is so much communication that happens. You start seeing, as your child keeps growing older, they might start reaching for certain things. Like, oh, that's what he wants. He might not be able to say it, but they start reaching for things. And that's when okay, fine, they might start pointing at things. These are all different aspects of communication. We're going to go into a whole lot of detail of communication and why it's very, very important for us to understand this, that it is not limited to speech. I want you all to understand is, even when you come to us, I know a lot of parents' concern is, I want my child to talk. But what you want really is, you want your children to be able to communicate. It's not speech. You're not looking at your child being able to, say ball, 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 or say, like we have a lot of times. That's why we tell a lot of parents and professionals, do not force your children, like, say this, say that, say this, because it's something that they become so rote, this is something that they're not really thinking about. And what we want is, all of our dreams is our children to be able to communicate and tell us, this is what happened. I went to school and this happened, or I'm hungry. I don't want to eat this. I want to eat something else. That is communication. So we forget that, and we are like, no, I want speech. I want him to say, okay, if he says 100 words. We have so many times that we've got children who come in who have huge vocabularies. They might have 100, 200, 250 words, but they don't know how to use it to communicate. And that's where we miss it out. We miss out on. And that is something very, very, very important that we need to kind of understand, is that we want our children to communicate. We don't want our children just to speak. We want them to communicate to us. So looking at it, there's definitely a process in place. So like I said, speech, language, and communication, it's three different things, but they all come together. Okay, so it starts with the most simple thing of me wanting to communicate. It represents my intent. Like, there should be an intent to communicate. When I mean intent, is there is a want, there is a need, there is a desire from inside for me. There is that if I communicate this out, I might get that, or I'm able to express myself. That starts with communication. That when that motivates our children, when the intent is created, it motivates them to start thinking, okay, I want to say that I want to play with the doll. So the child sees the doll. For example, I'm just trying to use everyday situations where the child sees a really pretty doll. But, if the child has to say, so he sees it, or he or she sees it, and they look and they're like, oh, I want to play with that. That's their interest building up. So the next thing what the child does is, that's where language comes in, and they start thinking, okay, so that looks like something that I play with. That's a toy. And now that's not just any toy, that's a doll. And my brain, the language centers in my brain start putting into place, what exactly are the words that I need to say? So I need to say, Mama, I want to play with the doll. It starts putting into place. It starts sequencing out the words of how I want to say it. It gets my mind ready. And then that message is sent into my mouth. And that's how the motor movements come into place. And we communicate, and I say, Mama, I want to play with the doll, or Mama doll, or anything of that sort. So without this in place, so you're not just looking at, that's the very, again, the biggest highlight that we want you all to take home today is that we're not just looking at them saying doll, 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 or, we do not just want, a robotic answer, words just coming out of their mouth. We want intent to be created. That's your first step. Me creating interest, our child getting motivated to communicate. That's your first step. Before you even go into, we are all looking at the output. We're looking at the speech coming out. But before even speech comes out, there needs to be intent. There needs to be language that comes into place. And then we come into speech. Yeah. So that is very, very important for us to understand when we work on communication. So creating that intent, many times it's like we get our children to, okay, you request for everything that you want and my child knows how to communicate. No, not really. If we take our communication, and I tell this to all my parents who I talk to, is that why do we limit our children to only certain things? Because if our lives revolved around me only saying, I want to eat biscuit, I want to eat chocolate, or, limited to certain things, it wouldn't work. We comment about so many things. We say, no, I don't want to do this. You answer to questions, you ask questions. There's so many things that we do with, that's the whole basis of that creates that interest for us to communicate. So that needs to come in for our children. And without creating that as your base, stepping into trying to get speech out, it does not work. That's where you see many times without the foundation of creating intent, if you go into working on speech, all you're going to get is your child repeating what you want them to say and not them wanting to actually communicate and say what they want. Yes. So that is very, very important. So like I said before, and this is something that we spoke about, especially in during our motor planning, webinar, that we did say is that speech, that's like I mentioned before, it is purely motor, whereas communication and language are pure cognitive. I need to think exactly what I need to say, how I need to say it, and then I put it across. So that is a cognitive part. I need my brain to think with me and see, okay, this is what I want. It is very, very important that these three come together. As I said, communication is a huge, it is a very broad term. You've got speech and language, and you've got so much more coming into it. So what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to take a real look into communication. So right now, this was just to give you all an understanding of the differences between the three, and how we need to actually think about that we want to be creating intent for our children. Now we're going to kind of look into communication. Okay, so I'm going to broadly classify it into two. You've got your verbal communication as well as your non-verbal communication. I'm very sure you'll understand these terms, and these, it might not be new, but I want to kind of emphasize on it is that you've got verbal communication in terms of me talking with my words. That's my speech, bringing the speech out and me talking and saying, this is what I want, this is how I want to do it, or I don't like this. That is verbal. And you've got your non-verbal communication. And we're going to look at this in detail. Certain studies, that we want you all to kind of why we are emphasizing on this is because when we force our children to be like, no, I want them to talk verbally, I need them to speak, and I don't want anything non-verbal, we're kind of hindering them. And that's why I want you all to understand is even us as individuals, every single day, if you take us, for example, there is 93% of the time we're using non-verbal communication. Okay, there's rest of the time we're always using, it's very limited. For example, if I have to say my tone or the way that I speak, it all matters. That's where nonverbal, I will be going into some more details about what exactly is nonverbal communication. So there is a difference between the two, okay? And we want our children to be able to use both. We do not limit them to only verbal. We say, no, I just want them to say it. There is a whole lot of things that we like, simple gestures. If I look at you across the room, I don't need to necessarily speak. If I want to call somebody from the end of the room to come towards me, I don't need to generally, say, come here. I can look at them. I have simple body movements that say this, and they will come. They will understand that is what I'm trying to communicate. We don't always, most of, especially now with the technology that we have, we don't speak. We're really not speaking. We most of the time we're always on text. We're always on, messaging people or, sending them. And even nowadays we just send one word and people understand what we're trying to say. So that is how communication is. We've got a whole lot more of non-verbal communication more than verbal communication that has happened. When it comes to this, I want you all to understand is even with our children, our primary focus is to get them to communicate verbally, non-verbally, see what the strengths of our children are and work on improving that. These are not two contradictory things. Oh, my child is crying all the time. Oh, my child only keeps pointing at things. There is no verbal communication. No, we have to work on it together at the same time. They are trying to say something non-verbally, and we sometimes tend to ignore that. Okay, so that is most of the messages. Most of our messages are non-verbal. So there's something that we always, that I want even parents to understand is the foundations of communication. It is non-verbal. Most of the time, if you see, it is non-verbal. Now, when I say non-verbal, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail here and say that we talk about, I'm going to just put three things out there: your facial expressions, your postures and your gestures, and your voice and tone. Let's take a simple, example. Like I told, how when a baby is born, they don't say that I want milk. They cry, and you immediately know. You see the discomfort on their face, and you immediately know that this is what they want, or they are in pain. We understand that through facial expressions most of the time. And even for us, most of us understand the actual meaning of what a person is trying to say, or are they really okay about it. Let's take, for example, that I'm saying, I'm just going to give you all an example of, if I'm trying to tell somebody, can you please do this for me? My facial expressions, if I'm being like, can you please do this for me, it immediately changes my voice, my tone, my facial expressions, how I'm asking them. Or if I'm being really rude, can you please get this done? You see, just those subtle changes in our voice and tone and my expressions and, my posture, all of that changes the intent, or changes the content of what we're actually trying to communicate. If I am being, the face, especially your facial expressions, it shows so much. When you see a child light up, that's what we always tell our parents, look out for those things. You'll start seeing what your children like, what your children don't like. They are actually communicating. We don't understand that because we want them to kind of, no, they have to say, they have to do what we're telling them to do. But you'll actually see, even during, in your therapies or in your activities, you see your child's interest. If you see them pushing something away, even with food, we spoke about all of that. If you see your child kind of pushing things away, that is them communicating that, hey, I really don't want to do that. Postures and gestures. If somebody is talking and I'm just sitting like this, I'm not really receiving what they're saying. I'm being very firm about the fact that I don't want to listen to what you have to say. But the whole intent, where my body is, how it is, what expressions I make, the tone of which I'm talking, all of that matters. All of that matters. And that is all a part. I can say, if I'm just talking about speech, I can say that I don't want to do this, but it won't make a difference of just me saying it. My tone, my voice, all of this come together for us to understand what exactly we are trying to say. And that's the same thing for our children. Some of them do have difficulties in this, and we do work on that, but there are times that our children are always communicating, and we need to be open to kind of understand that. The one thing that we want you all to understand is the moment that you start, okay, you push on, I want my child to be verbal, and I want them to talk, and they have to say everything. They have to be able to, speak everything with their mouth, and they need to say it, and you keep pushing them for that. The moment you do that, this is what we see, because I will go into where we use this, but the moment we see our children trying to communicate something non-verbally and we ignore it, we don't listen to them, and we're not paying attention to what they are doing non-verbally in terms of they run away from something. You will see our children do that. Even simple things of their body, their body language says so much. If they get all like, no, they get defensive, that they don't want to do something. And when you push in for verbal, like you want them only to speak, like I said, it's only 7% of us that we use as speech. The rest 93% of our conversations is all non-verbal. The moment you start ignoring the non-verbal, you ignore that communication, you're increasing their difficulties and their frustrations. They are going to get so frustrated. You're pushing them to speech. They stop responding to you. They stop responding to speech. They stop responding to even want to talk. And there's so much, you're increasing that, and you're actually reducing the place where your child is going to, be included, and you're not giving them an opportunity to communicate. And that itself will shut them down, where, hey, they're not really listening to me. I really don't want to communicate. And we see that with so many of our children, that they actually, when we give them a space to communicate non-verbally, and they start understanding, okay, they're paying, you see a whole other side of them. You see them wanting to settle down. You see them wanting to get your attention, to try telling you something. And that is something very, very important that we want you all to always remember, is do not ignore the subtle signs. Do not ignore especially their nonverbal communication. Do not ignore it. It is very, very important. So now we spoke about speech, communication, we spoke about language, we spoke about all of these things. I spoke highly about verbal and nonverbal communications. Now, what happens when this becomes difficult for our children? And it does for most of our children. They really don't know. That's where you see, especially, most of the children who are on the spectrum, that they have difficulties in terms of communicating. They have difficulties in terms of putting speech, putting words together. They're not able to do it. They're not able to point. They're not able to respond to what you're trying to say, because they have a lot of difficulties coming into place. What do? Do we keep pushing them for speech because we want them to talk? Do we keep doing that? No, we don't. Because always remember that if we can, that's what I tell all of my parents, if we can use nonverbal modes of communication, if I can find an easier way, instead of trying to call somebody and tell them this is what, if I just send them a message and they understand that this is what I'm trying to say, it's more than enough for me. So that's where, when communication starts becoming difficult, or when especially verbal communication starts becoming difficult for my child, we start using something called augmentative and alternative communication. Now, this is something that I really, really, really want to focus on, and I want you all to really understand, because there's so much barrier when it comes into, we call this augmentative alternative communication, or AACs, okay? That there is, from parents to professionals to society to everybody around, that we build up these barriers that this is not okay. And that's what we want to change. And that's what our hope is, that, a little seed is sown in here, that, okay, fine, that even if my child, our goal is communication. My goal is not just speech. Our goal is getting them to communicate however they can, whatever is convenient for them, what is not pressure, putting a lot of pressure on them or frustrating them out and making it more difficult for them to communicate. I use AACs. So when it comes to AACs, simply put in, is that it basically supplements, or it compensates for the difficulties that our child has in terms of speech and language. Okay, this can be spoken or written modes of communication. So when I'm talking, there's two different terms, augmentative. So when I'm talking about is augmentative is to help. It kind of, it is to supplement that. Okay, my child can speak a bit, but it's not completely clear, or there are issues. I use an aid to help my child communicate with a device, or different things that we use, which we will look into a little more further. That is an augmentative communication. When I look at alternative, is my child has difficulties in speech. It is very difficult for him or her to communicate and say things out. So I use an alternative mode. So instead of speech, where speech is not present, I use an alternative mode of communication to make it functional for my children. So when it becomes difficult, our first thing is, no one should be deprived. No one should be deprived of the right to communicate. It's like, I use this example with a lot of my parents, and I say, imagine that you don't have your throat, or you don't have your voice, because for us speech is very easy. And like we spoke about in motor planning and feeding and all of that, is for us, we take this so for granted. We do not realize the amount of work that goes in for every single sound and every single word that we say. But for our children who find it so difficult, we keep pushing them. No, you've got to do it. I'm not saying that we don't work on speech. We do work on that, but also at the same time, I'm giving them an opportunity to communicate. I'm giving them an opportunity to come and express and tell, hey, this is what I'm feeling, or this is what I'm going through. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. We're giving them that opportunity. That is very, very important when it comes. Now, like I said, why do we need AACs? The main thing is, we want it to enhance communication. We don't want to limit them to one particular mode and say that, no, you've only got to talk, or no, you've only got to, point and, request and, only whatever is seen outside. You're giving them another modality. Just like we all use verbal, non-verbal, we use all of our communication. AACs is just another modality for them to communicate. So its main thing is to enhance communication. So this works for children who have any speech and language difficulties. You will have children who've got, like I said, motor planning difficulties. For them to get the movement into place of them saying a word or saying a sound, which is so hard, difficulties like that, if children have that, we do use AACs for them. We use AACs for children who are minimally speaking, who don't have a lot. They find it hard. They can't say a lot. They have a lot in their mind, but they're not able to put it out and say it out. We use it for children like that, and also for children who are non-speaking or children who have irrelevant speech. We are giving them another mode that helps them, or it gives them another way to communicate out. Now, the reason why we do this, now many parents come with this concern that my child is talking, so let my child, all especially children who are speaking, okay, the minimally speaking, or children who have irrelevant speech. A lot of the parents come with this concern is, my child is talking, so why do I need an AAC? And we get them like, no, work on his speech, it will work. Sometimes our children have that difficulty, and what we're trying to do is we're giving them a place where they can have a total communication, where it's not just limited. So if my child can only say can just say a couple of words, we're limiting that. When we put the pressure on them that, no, you've got to speak, you've got to, only with your speech you're going to do this, you're limiting them and you're not giving them another mode. And what is happening is you are depriving them of their communication. So when I incorporate this AAC into it, I'm giving them another modality, and you're getting communication, you're getting your speech, you're getting through your AACs, you're getting to understand what your child is trying to talk about. Now, there is a lot of myths, and I'm very sure that a lot of the parents here have heard this also, is there are a lot of myths when it comes around AACs. Okay, so I'm just touching a few. I'm not even going to go into a lot. There is an umpteen number of the doctors will say, no, this is the reason why you don't have to do it. Or, you hear from other parents, or you hear from professionals itself. We know a lot of therapists who do say that, no, you don't have to do AACs. AACs do not, it's like you're giving up on your child. So that's the first thing that I want to say. AAC, many times you hear AAC is the last resort. We will work on speech. We'll work for 6-7 years. And then after that, if my child is not talking, then I will go into an AAC. Okay. So when we say that's when we say a myth, it's not true. Okay. That's what we mean when we're saying this is not true. It is not a last resort. It is not us giving up on our children and saying that our children cannot speak. Okay. It does not hinder them in any way. The sooner you begin, you're giving them, like I said, the right to communicate is there for every child. The moment that you focus on only the final outcome, that is the speech, when you're focusing only on that and you're not focusing on the intent to communicate and working on language and getting them to use their nonverbal modes of communication, when you're not doing that, it is not a last resort. We are working on all of this together. The another one that a lot of our parents, that we hear, and, it is a concern, it's a genuine concern that comes up, is that, ma'am, if we start using an AAC, is it going to stop my child from actually speaking? And there is a lot of research that even if you just Google it and you see, there's a lot of research that says that it does not hinder our children. It actually does one thing, is you are motivating them. And in that, as you keep working alongside with their speech, you actually see children wanting to vocalize more, wanting to get words, and it actually helps them want to speak more. It does not hinder. If in case it does the opposite of actually motivating our kids to want to speak more. So that's another myth that I want to break today and say that, no, it does not hinder. It is not a last resort. And another thing that we hear a lot of times is that, no, my child does not have my child is not sitting down. My child cannot think, does not have, the IQ to do that, to work with an AAC or, use a device. There's a certain skill set that my child needs to have to ever benefit from AACs. No, actually, they don't. But what you're doing is when you're providing them a communication system, you're giving them opportunities to facilitate communication and cognitive development. You're giving them, you're just not assuming that they don't know anything just because they don't know how to speak. And that's what happens with most of our kids. And we are so surprised, like all of us here who especially work with children, when we give them another modality and you start hearing what our children have to say, you will be taken aback so much that, wow, there is so much. It's because what happens is my child is able to think, but my child is not able to say it out. And we think, that my child doesn't know a lot of stuff. But when they start actually communicating their thoughts out, it's so beautiful to see the way that they think. And that is what they don't necessarily need to have a certain skill set to begin starting using AACs. You can start right from basic, like some studies show that children, babies as small as 18 months, they start using AACs. So it really does benefit them. That's what the fourth myth that they're saying is that let's wait till they get older. We've got studies that say no, start as early as possible. Start as early as possible. It helps them because it's facilitating. It is enhancing their language and speech development. It's enhancing their cognitive development. And another myth that we hear is, okay, let's not go into using high-tech devices. Let's only use, simple low-tech devices for our child. No, it doesn't. There's no, whatever works. Again, when you work with a therapist, when you work with a professional, we see what works best for your child. What kind of an AAC works? What is it, an augmentative mode? Is it an alternative mode? We see what works for your child based on their strengths, and we build on that. That is very, very important for you all to understand. So I'm here to bust these myths and say that no, none of these things are true. In fact, it's all the opposite, where AAC helps our children get better. You're giving them the opportunity to communicate. So, just going quickly into the types of AAC, I'm not going to go a lot into detail. We will, based on, because this cannot be generic, or this cannot be just be said that, okay, this is going to work for all children. It has to be looked at based on the child's level, based on the child's strengths, based on the child, what difficulties the child have. We work on that and we try to customize and be very, very flexible. So broadly put into, there are two broad categories. You've got your unaided and aided. And just like the words actually mean, when I'm saying unaided, it means that I don't need an external tool. I can do it without any help, basically, that I just need my body. So you've got things like, your body language, your facial expressions. Your facial expressions is a form of AAC, or your, children use gestures and symbols and signs, and that's unaided. Sign language and things like that. That is an unaided form. When I'm talking about aided, again, they require some form of tool. So when I'm talking about tools, or, they need some sort of equipment. So there is low tech and high tech. And as you can understand, these are very simple terms. Low tech is something that does not require a battery source, that does not require electricity or anything of that sort, that, they can use. So that's simple things like, pen and paper. Using that, or using, many of you would have heard picture exchange communication systems, where they use picture cards to communicate. So that just uses very low tech things of paper and pens and things like that. Communication boards and books, objects we use, visual schedules, things like those are all different low tech devices. When I'm looking at high tech, what I'm looking at, it is some form of an electronic device that we use. So you've got your tablets, you've got your smartphones, where AAC apps are put in, and this, allows symbols and, dynamic symbols and languages to be there, text, where your children can text and type, all of that, where they, draw and they write, or they've got pictures all into one. So you've got different apps for that. So you've got high tech and low tech apps. So this is not generic, where I'm again saying that it's not like, okay, let me see everything, even unaided. Even if I want my child to sign and say something, or my child needs to have the motor dexterity to do that, it is. So everything has to be customized when it comes into aided systems. Now, how much of motor difficulty does my child have in taking and picking up and, giving a picture? Or is my child able to take the grasp in of or trying to point and touch a screen? All of these things, we look That's what, when you go to a professional who understands this, we kind of look, we assess and see what works. If my child enjoys typing, okay, does my child have the motor dexterity to do that? If not that, okay, what else can I do? So if my child cannot type, can I work on using pictures? So we look at different things, we look at all of these things before we say, okay, let's use this AAC device for them. So you've got low tech, high tech, unaided things, unaided AACs that go into place. So now I've told you the what, the why, and this is, I think, the one place that I want all parents to kind of take in from this webinar, is that there is so much that your children want to communicate, and how you take the time to understand to do it gets them to actually, it, like we said, you're enhancing their communication, you're improving their intent, you're increasing their interest. So I'm just going to give you quick 10, because we're doing it's a 10-year thing. We want to give you a quick 10 practical tips that you can do, and I'm going to give you some examples for it as well. The first thing that I want you all to always remember is that presume competence. When I mean that is that do not underestimate your child. Okay, just because my child does not have speech, and this happens, it's no one's fault. We immediately think that just because my child cannot talk, we base their intelligence, or we base their abilities on how much they can speak. But don't ever do that. Just because they have, it can be, like we said, it is a genuine motor difficulty that my child is having and they can't. There is no prerequisite skill. You have to believe in your child. That is the first goal. If you think that my child doesn't know and you put a stop there, you're not going to get anything. And if you think that, no, okay, my child knows only 5 words, so I'm going to stick to the 5 words. And if you're not challenging them, but you're also not in a place where you're encouraging them to want to communicate with you. And that's the first thing. And we've been talking about, I think, right from webinar 1, is building relationships. Even last week, we spoke about guiding relationships and how important it is. That's where a whole lot of co-regulation comes into places. The way, non-verbally also, what is my tone? How am I responsive enough for my child to come and talk to me? It is very, very important that you need to believe in your children, and do not make the assumption that they don't know this. Do not make the assumption that they know it all. Yeah. So sometimes, like, no, he should know all of this. And so, you expect them to know how to use things. But we basically, the entire thing is we believe in them and we build on that. We build on that relationship. Get to know your child, see what works. You trying to use AACs where something for your child is not interested in, it's not going to work. That works on you trying to have that partnership. That's what it's, even if my child, finds it difficult to communicate, can I stay regulated and not get frustrated at them? Building that relation, because the moment we put a demand, that is very, very important, that I want you all to understand, is the moment you start demand, no, you got to say this, no, you got to press it like this. No, even when it comes to AACs or using a device, you see a lot of them going like, no, I want you to press this. No, I want you to do that. You have to do it exactly like that. And it gets so demanding for your child that we wouldn't like it. I always put yourself in your children's shoes. We wouldn't like somebody continuously coming and asking us questions like, what is this? What is that? Do this, do it. We don't like it. Why do we do it to our children? Why? That's the main focus. Build your relationship, stay regulated with them, getting to do that partnership where you're building that together. That is so much more important. Without this, we've been emphasizing on it. Without having that, you trying to do anything else is all going to fall because there is no foundation in place. Okay, so that is very, very important. When you are regulated, your child knows, okay, fine, they are okay. I can come and I can try to tell them what it is. The next thing that I want to say is allow your child to explore, even when it is on a device, especially when it comes, whether it's high tech, low tech. Give them the opportunities where let them scroll, let them look like, no, we want you to do it exactly like this. No, you have to press this. No, you have to do it like, no, give them a chance to explore. You know how babies learn to speak? It just starts with them trying to explore their mouth. We see it as, when they babble, when they start cooing, they're actually, what they're doing is they're playing around in their mouth. They're trying to figure out, where does my tongue go? Oh, my tongue can move like this. Oh, my cheeks can do this. Oh, my lips can do this. And that's how they start doing it. And then they start connecting that to speech. The same thing with your AACs also. Give them the space to explore. It makes a huge difference. Let them look through the picture cards. Let them look through the words. If you try forcing it, we see this, we see it with professionals also. It's, we something like, no, I need to hold your hand. No, you need to press it exactly like this, or you need to touch it like this, or you need to, we do that. And it gets so, it just, you just make the child go like, no, I don't like it. And I don't want to do it. And that's where your child does not even start responding. So that's very important, where you give them the space to explore. When you're looking at something very, very important, especially when it comes to high-tech devices, like using a tab or, an iPad or anything of that sort, is I would always tell parents is, please dedicate your device. When I say dedicate your devices, keep it separately and solely for the purpose of using it for communication. If you've got a child who loves watching YouTube, who loves doing all of that, playing games on the tab, and you've put your AAC app on it, you're not going to get your child to actually communicate, because your child is going to keep going. And if they're actually, really caught up on doing that, they'll keep going away from it. And you will also not want to give the tab, because your child immediately goes to, going and finding the YouTube button and doing, going and playing the rhymes that they want to do. So dedicate your device in such a way. So iPad does have this option of doing guided access, where the child can only go into the AAC app. Even for tablets and things like that, I generally tell my parents is that either make another account where there is nothing, or you delete the apps from that account so your child cannot go and find it. So there are different things that you can do. Again, you'll have to work with your therapist along to find what works for your children. So if the goal is you're giving them the tab to play and to watch, their cartoons and rhymes and things like that, you're losing the whole effect of trying to use that tool as a communication device. Yeah, so that is very, very important. The next thing that I want you all to remember is that ensure there is constant access to the AAC device, whether it's low tech or high tech. Please make sure. I always tell this. Imagine if you don't, you are made to keep your voice at home, and you're not allowed to, you don't have a voice to go outside when you talk. Many parents are, yeah, ma'am, we do it at home, we practice it, but we don't take it. You're losing the point of it. We want our children to communicate, whether it's outside. That's why where, high-tech devices are a lot more portable and easier. Again, we have to see what works for our children, but make sure that there is constant access. If you're using high-tech devices, make sure that the battery is charged, so that anytime that the child has access to it. So this is very, 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 very important. Another thing that this is something that I really would like to highlight when I say that use it for the purpose of communication. Many times what we see a lot of people do is that they use it as a picture identification system. Okay, can you show me where is the apple? Okay, touch. Can you show me where is the chocolate? Touch. Can you show me? That is not what communication is. We can work on concepts. We can work on language concepts using our AAC devices. But when I mean communication, like I've been stressing out, it is the ability of my child to exchange what he or she wants to say. And they're able to do that. And do not go into this thing of, okay, point at this, do this. Okay, can you show me what is this? No, we want them to communicate. That is what very, very important when it comes. And, many times we miss out on these small pointers. And that's why, like, ma'am, AACs are not working for my child. Ma'am, my child, he really is not interested or doesn't want to use it. It's because we are not really using it in the right way. Another thing that I want us to remember is plan to make it successful. Okay, your child is not going to learn it overnight, or just because they start using, that's what I said. Don't think that they know it all, but we're giving them the place that, hey, I believe whatever you can show me, can you please show? So it doesn't happen. You have to plan your activities. You have to plan out, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Can I put what all pictures I'm going to, that's again, working with your therapist. They give you ideas of, let's take an example that I want my child to play with a ball. Now, what are the words that I can use? Play, ball, you put it inside, outside, let's throw it up high, let's throw it down. You've got so many words that come together. It doesn't happen. You've got to plan. And when when you have it planned and ready, it makes it easier. Without you having your AAC device ready with your scenarios and activities, it becomes hard. It's not really meeting the purpose of communication. Another thing that is very, very important is expose different language constructs. So when I say this, it might sound, what exactly does that mean? But let me break it down to you. It is, we communicate for a variety of reasons, okay? So like I said before, it's not just for requesting. So many times what happens is, even from professional a point of view, many times we use, because food is generally a motivating factor for many children, what we do is we use it for food and we stick with food. I want this, I want that. We only use it for the purpose of requesting. Like I said, intent of communication. I can comment about things. I can say I don't want something. I can respond. I can ask questions. There's so many ways. Giving my opinion, greeting others, you know, telling a joke or telling a story. There's you start with some basic functional things of requesting because you want them to, you want to create intent, but you don't stick to that. Even when it goes into sentences, like when it goes into expression, we all go into I want ball, I want chocolate, I want toy, I want. We teach that, and every time a sentence starts, your child keeps thinking I want. But I want is not the only way we start a sentence. It is a ball. Or we say the ball is like that. We've got different ways we start sentences, different grammar structures. Again, like how I mentioned, language has different structures that need to come into place. We use a whole lot of it when it comes into different constructs. So you have to use it. You have to like I said, even when you take any activity, when you're planning out, there's so many words that you can teach. There's so many things like, let's go, stop, more, you start playing with the car. You can incorporate so many words into that, and you're getting your child to learn language. You see your child picking up one word sentences, one word utterances, you go to 2, 3. Again, you're giving them options between that. Exposing them to that is very, very important. For that, and very, very important thing that you need to remember is that you need to model it. You can't go into question mode and say, what is this? Tell me, what is this? Can you point and show me what is this? Your child's not going to learn it. You need to model. We say something where aided language stimuli, where your child needs to see you use it. If you don't use it and you are talking and you're just showing the tab, okay, can you show me what this is? They're not going to respond. They'll be like, why should I touch? Mama is not touching it. Papa is not touching it. Why should I do it? So when you start modeling it, it's, learning AAC is like learning a whole other language. You don't learn all of it. If I'm telling, if it's a foreign language, if I'm telling you to go learn Spanish or Arabic or something of that sort, it's something new to, unless you start hearing it, you start practicing it, you start hearing somebody else talk and you start trying it out, you make mistakes. But that's why you give them the space to explore. You do it, but you're modeling it. You're showing it to them. You are commenting using the AAC. You are requesting using the AAC. You are, telling, oh, I don't think I like that. You're touching words. You're typing out words. You're touching pictures. And you are modeling it before you're even expecting your child to start doing that. And when that comes into place, it becomes so much more easier. And the most important one of all that I want to say is wait. Please wait. Do not be like, okay, you ask the question within the next 5 seconds, I want my child to respond. It's going to take time. Please, please, please wait. Please, that's the first, very, very important. Waiting is so important because your child is learning it. It's going to take using a device. We talk, so we think that they need to type or they need to point pictures at the speed at which we're talking. Sorry, no, it doesn't work that way. It's so much more slower than speaking. It's going to take time. They have to think about the words that they want to say. They need to find the words on the device and then they need to communicate. So give them the space for that. Wait. Don't keep on point at this, keep pressing, and you keep talking. That's why we tell you don't need to always talk. Give them the space. You can always use your nonverbal communication. Let them pick up on that. So it's very, very important that you do that. So that's the first thing, those are few tips that I want the parents also to remember. We will go into, if you need more details, please do reach out to us. Your therapist will be willing to explain this on how you can make this go forward. It's very important. This is something that I want you on. The moment, like I said at the beginning, if your perception of your child is so limited and you do not think that your child can do this, your expectations are going to you have no expectations of what your child can do, immediately you're reducing their opportunity, and that is affecting their achievement. It's a very, very strenuous cycle. So it is very important. That's what I said, the right at the top, the biggest thing I want you all to remember is assume that your child, give them that space that they can actually do. They understand stuff, they are competent. Most of our children have difficulties in terms of, they're not able to express themselves out, and that is why, but they have so much of beautiful thoughts up in their mind that they're not able to express. And the moment you give that and you give them the opportunity to communicate that, you see them starting to achieve better and do so much more better. So that's what I want to leave you with. In the end, I want to say is, just using all of these modes, can we help our children find their voices? They have so much that they want to say and share out into this world. And can we be people, like the rest of the world is going to find it hard, but can we be people who help them find their voices that they can actually communicate and tell us? So I hope that this was, it was informative, and we will definitely be taking questions also at this time. I'll hand it over to Pranjali.
Yeah, so we have quite a number of questions. First is from Charlotte. For a child who cannot decipher 2D images, what do we introduce if a child is non-speaking? Another part of this question is, what is the difference between PECS and PCS?
There is picture communication system and the picture exchange communication system.
Okay. What is the first part of that question? I didn't get you, sorry.
So, shall I say? So, okay, now there's this child who is non-speaking and who has both feeding issues also. And, like sounds are just very few that the child makes, few babbling sounds. He's 14 now. But he cannot connect to any picture. Like when we try to use a communication book, what did you have yesterday, and we try to, that mother sends a photos of the images of whatever he had for dinner or for the lunch yesterday. He doesn't even connect to it. This is we try to speak about it, he doesn't even look at the picture. But at the same time, I've tried to make him sit on the computer and just press different keys, and there's movement on the screen, so he notices it. He looks at the screen. He uses his mother's phone to look at to just scroll. So, but on a book, on a 2D, this thing, he doesn't connect to at all. He can't figure out anything on a book. So how do I,
again, for that, I would definitely say, so you said that he picks up his interest on a device. So that's your first sign, that use it on a device. You start with that. Again, like we said at the beginning, every AAC, every AAC is not generic. That's what I said. You cannot generalize and say it works the same for all children. Some children do pick up on pictures, some children don't. So when you said it, the first thing that came into my mind was, hey, he's scrolling, he's looking at your words, or he's looking at the pictures on your device. So can I use that? And the next thing is, if you're using pictures, again, he's not connecting to it. Is it the way are we always asking it? Like I said, are we modeling it to them? Like for them to understand, like I said, they might not actually.
Okay, the situation is like the 3 children are sitting in the classroom and we're just discussing, what did you have yesterday? What did you do yesterday? What did you have for dinner yesterday? The other children are telling me, and the Didi is there, the assistant is there for this child, and she's trying to open the book and say, I had idli and sambar. The child is just blank, he's not even looking at the book or connecting to that picture. And it's been going on for quite some time now. So I'm not able to use the communication book as such. But, I just let him tap on the keyboard and and I've kept it on a Word doc. I've kept it on a font size is very big and red in color, so that he connects to it. Whatever he's typing connects. There's some movement on the screen. He looks at it. He keeps, the cause and effect is happening. He's tapping on the keyboard and looking at the screen.
Okay. So that's I think, like, you've got your answer right there in what you're saying, is that use that instead of trying to, like, don't give him, because again, book is not something that interests your child. I would suggest is do it on a screen. Get a board, like you said, bigger fonts, bigger things. So you type out, again, in modeling is that you're typing out your answers. It's not that maybe your child knows. So you maybe even doing simple things. That's where planning comes into place. You're asking the mom what the child ate, so the child knows. I mean, the answer. So it's like, I think mama gave us an option between dosa and idli. I think, what did you eat? Can you get somewhere? You're modeling it, but you're giving, close-ended options where your child
have
can
the pictures of, maybe have the pictures on the screen of the normally what he eats, and then just tap on that one. Maybe.
Yeah, you can do that too. So that's what you'll have to work around it. It's all, you have to see what your child picks up on. That is very, very important. You cannot go, okay. So very importantly, like you said, books are not working. It's out of the picture. Try to see devices work for him. Let's try to use that. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay. The second part was the difference between PECs and PCS.
PECs, yeah. So picture exchange communication system and picture communication systems, they're two different things. In terms of picture communication system, I can just point at it. When I'm saying picture, I'm actually exchanging. PECs is where there, and it's a structured program that is there in place, that there's a hierarchy that is followed where we exchange the picture to communicate. It's not just me pointing randomly at the, just pointing at a book. So that's the major difference that is there between the two.
Okay, yeah, get it.
Yeah.
Another thing you said is that while you're using the tool for communication, you should be a part of it. So I would not ask. Instead, I would also type, or for my child whose speech is not clear but is good with his not to speak. So I can use the device to type and ask him so that he also responds in typing instead of my asking him verbally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I think if you've joined us last, we've been talking about declarative language where you get them. You don't just question. The moment it becomes question, it becomes demanding for our children. And that's what we don't want. We want it to be responsive. So when they see you start doing it, they're like, okay, can I get, the interest of wanting to do it along with you? So that's very, very important.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think I'll let others speak too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So next question is, my child is non-speaking. He's able to express non-verbally, maybe crying, pointing, or dragging us. How can I help him to speak and communicate? What should be the basic start? Is there any age limit after which the child cannot speak? And what is the difference between expression and communication?
Okay, there's a lot of things together, I think, that we spoke about, but I'm going to try to put it out there as, yes, like you said, is that your child is communicating non-verbally by pointing and crying. But what happens with that is that it's very limited. Like if I'm pointing, it has to be something that is in my visual field, or it has to be something present in the room. It can never be something that is outside, or, something that I'm just thinking about. That's where, AAC devices help, because you've got content in, you've got things that your children like, and you teach it to them in such a way that, hey, I can express. It's not always like, I don't need to see let's say, for example, like I like McDonald's. I don't need to always see McDonald's to say that I want to eat McDonald's. I just think it. I don't have to always see the symbol, right? So if my child can only, every time he sees a symbol and points at it, maybe he's sitting at home and he wants to have that. I'm just giving that as an example. But if I can have that picture on a device and my child can point at it and say that this is what I want to do, you've got it. So different AAC systems, again, I'm always going to say that it's not one shoe fits all. It has to be made according to your child. There is no age limit. The sooner you start, the better. We always say that early intervention, because you get so much more, and there's no age limit. The sooner you begin, it's always so much more better. Did I cover all the points that they had asked? Anything that I missed?
The question was, is there any age limit after which our child cannot speak?
I don't say that your child cannot. Again, speaking and communicating, two different things. Now, if I can, speech can get limited by, it is difficult in terms of whether the child has motor difficulties, but we don't generally say that if you're only focusing on getting your child to speak, it can get difficult. But if you're focusing on communication, you can get so much more in. So we generally do not. Again, the moment you say that, oh, my child will not speak after 7 years of age, yes, there is definitely neural plasticity. There's a lot of things that happen. But the moment you go in with that, you're already shutting the door and saying that my child is not, ready to do anything more than this. So that's very, very important. Yeah. Shireen ma'am, yeah.
So I'm just going to add in here. So when you're talking about speech and nonverbal communication, Sarah has covered that beautifully in terms of why you need to go from nonverbal communication to more specific communication so that you can go beyond the needs of a child. But the age limit thing is something that's, I would say, a myth, and unfortunately a pressure that's put on a lot of parents and therapists, when you say, oh, if my child doesn't speak by 5, he's never going to speak. He's already going to be 5. He's going to be 7. If he doesn't speak, he's not going to speak ever. Take it a different way, that your child has motor planning difficulties, and that is why the speech is not developed. Now, what do we do to develop those motor planning, that motor planning in such a way that speech is a possibility for them, right? Now, the brain is a beautiful thing. The plasticity doesn't wean off after 5. It's not like suddenly the brain just stops learning. You are all still learning. You're learning from us as we speak. Are you stopping to learn? No. You're all learning, and you will continue to learn till you die. That's the beauty of the brain. I work with 25-year-olds. I work with 30-year-olds who are now motivated to use their voice and speak. So that they cannot speak ever because they've crossed 5 and 7 is a big myth. And please take that pressure off, because if you put that pressure on yourself, you will automatically transfer it to the child. The child gets more stressed out about speech, starts hating speech, starts running away from speech. It meets a speech therapist, starts crying. Trust me, I've seen all of this. And that is the biggest thing that stops our children from speaking, because there's so much pressure about speech. There's research that says that if you bring AAC in, the speech actually gets better. More speech developed because they were given an avenue to speak. They were given an avenue to communicate their thoughts. They were calmer, they were happier. You want a happier child, or you want a frustrated child?
Yeah.
It's this thing that you have to think about all the time, because the more the child is frustrated, the less you will get from them. And that's where we talk about, from the parenting styles to the motor planning to body awareness, to talk about what's the crux of it, to we're looking at guiding relationship, and now bringing AAC in, because you have to connect these dots. And that's why we've kept these webinars in a certain way too. Okay, I will stop now because there are a lot of questions. Please go ahead, Ashley.
Can AAC be helpful to kids with normal disfluency of speech?
No, normal disfluency. So you're looking at, so in that case, it's just in terms of fluency. Again, that's a whole other avenue where we will work on, in terms of working on getting them to improve their fluency. So that's a whole other avenue. It can improve. So we generally will not, again, we're working on children where the communication and the speech does get affected. Again, based on severities, we will look at it, but I will not be able to say much more beyond once until I see the child. So we generally do not go in for that. We generally work on improving their fluencies for children who have disfluencies.
So, next question. Yeah. Okay. Where is the AAC method of communication available? My child stays in Guwahati, and we have very limited treatment options for delayed speech.
If you're looking at in terms of where do you purchase apps, again, there are different apps. We've got an application that we've developed in the institute. There are a lot of apps that are there available all through the internet. We'll have to look at what works for your child. Again, please do not, we see a lot of like, oh, they invest into something and it doesn't work for their child, and then it's a whole. So please meet a therapist. We do have a lot of places. We offer tele-rehabilitation. So if you want online sessions, we do that also. So we will be able to guide you better. Whoever's asked that question, please don't just invest into something without meeting a professional. I would always say, meet somebody. We do have apps in place, and we will be able to explain better on how to go about what works for your child.
Similar question by Mamta. Please suggest an app for Hindi, the language, AAC for Hindi.
We've got Avaz we have Avaz. There is an app Avaz, which is developed here in India, which has most of the Indian languages in place. So that is an option that is there.
Another option, just before you, any AAC software that you use, app you use, system you use, it's about how.
Yeah.
It's about how you do it finally. So whether you have Avaz and you have everything there, or whether you have Play Talk and you have all the pictures there, and you've just filled it up with pictures, it doesn't mean that automatically things are going to get magical and the child is going to communicate. It's about how you introduce that concept to them and go back and forth with them so that they start understanding what that word means, what that picture represents, what do I get out of it, how do I use this for communication, and so on and so forth. So it's not really just one app that does it all. It's whatever app you have to look at the convenience for you, the access for the child in terms of how easy it is for them to access, or go from one folder to another, so on and so forth, and all of that too. So I would say it's the method you use, the approach you use, more important than the app you're using. But of course, there are apps and they have different things. Like she said, we have PlayTalk, but that's what we kind of created. And it's someone asked that question, how can you buy it? It's a free software for any Android-based system. If you have an Android-based system, not a phone, a 7-inch screen plus, you can download PlayTalk. It's for free, so that's something that you can use. Otherwise, you have the light versions of many apps. You can try it out, see if it works, and then buy the actual app. So just a suggestion.
Even in PlayTalk, we have options of recording. You've got voice recorders in place. So even if it's a language, you can, do that also in place. So that also will help. So yeah.
I can see we have a few hands raised, but I think we have time for just one more question. Dr. Shabnam, please go ahead.
Madam, my 7-year-old daughter, she has most of the way non-verbal communication. But she is diagnosed as a global developmental delay since 7 months of her age. So whether there are chances to develop her speech or language?
Again, I think that's what we've been focusing on right from the beginning, is that yes, we work. See, this is not just AACs or not anybody who has a difficulty in speech, language, and communication. We do suggest, using, we work with improving communication. That's our first goal. So if she does have a global developmental delay, there can be, so based on it, we'll have to again see a lot of things based on accessibility, based on the child's strengths. We will work on it, but there is, again, believe that, like ma'am said, that we're breaking the myth of that there is an age limit. The brain does pick up. We have to, again, it'll take time, but we'll have to work on. So it is a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not magical, like one thing fits all. It doesn't work that way, but you have to kind of work on it. Okay, ma'am, if you want to add something to that.
Yes, I just want to add this. Your question was, will she speak, he or she speak, your child speak? Again, we don't know, but what you need to do is look at what is the core issue and work from there. Don't look at the tip of the iceberg and say speech is what I want, academics is what I want. Look at the foundations, is what is missing. Primitive reflexes are integrated, postural reflexes have come in, especially for a child with GDD, there's probably weakness, low tone, muscles are not moving appropriately. So you would need to look at, again, the muscular strength, the oral muscular strength, developing that, making it stronger so that there is a possibility of movements developing, the normal movement patterns developing, and at the same time building AAC. So things can happen parallelly. It's not that one or the other. Things build parallelly. So we have a communication, language, cognition system in place, and we have a motor system in place, which have to work together. So whenever she's ready for speech, that it can be translated into her language and communication. Think of it that way.
Ma'am, excuse me. We are staying in Maharashtra. So if we'll come to Bangalore for 15 days or 10 days, so can we get like a session continuously so we can work on her?
Get in touch with us, drop us a mail or call us, and we can see what's doable. Unfortunately, most of our team members have got back-to-back sessions all the time. So, but we can try and plan something out if you are coming, and we can take it forward from there. So drop us a mail or drop us a message and we will get back to you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Because of time constraint, I think we'll have to stop here. Sarah, I'll hand back over to you for the end note.
All right. We will be getting back to a lot of questions. I do see there's so many questions that we still need to answer in a lot of hands that are raised. Please feel free to reach out to us. We are definitely, our social media handles have been put out on the chats, so that you can anyway, communicate with us, and we will definitely get back to you. Questions that are asked, this video will be again posted on our YouTube channel, and we will be answering the questions also in the comment section. So if we've we've missed out on any questions, so please make sure that we will make sure that it comes back in the comments. This is just the 6th one. We are meeting back next week. We will be doing a presentation on language and conversation and social interactions that will be happening. So please do stay tuned for that, and do join back for that also. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and we will see you all next week. Have a good day.